Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so let's start. So again, we are looking at the Sāmaññaphala Sutta, the fruits of the ascetic life, and the idea behind the sutta is basically an exposition of what is known usually as the gradual training, the Anupubbha Sikka in Pali. And this gives a kind of a complete overview of the training on the path, from the moment you start out all the way to the very end. And for that reason, it's a very useful framework for relating to in your practice. You can know where you are, you can know what the things that you need to do. And so it's very useful for a practical purpose. And it is really parallel with the Noble Eightfold Path. This is one of the things I want to show as we go through this, that the gradual training and the Noble Eightfold Path are really the same thing. The gradual training is like an expansion of the Noble Eightfold Path. It gives you a lot of detailed content on how to practice each of the factors. So far, we have just seen the very beginning of the path. The beginning of the path is the Buddha arising in the world. Yeah, someone, somewhere, having this breakthrough, seeing reality as it actually is, and becoming the Buddha, becoming the teacher of the world. That is the only thing we have seen so far. That's the beginning, interestingly enough. That's the beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path. Without that Buddha arising in the world, there is no gradual training. There is no Noble Eightfold Path. There is nothing without the Buddha. Yeah, so this is always the beginning of the practice. It's actually a Buddha appearing in the world. And that is why it is considered so fortunate that we live at a time when there is a Buddha, because there will be times when there is no Buddha. Then another Buddha arises, and then it's kind of darkness and light, darkness and light. This is why it is considered so fortunate, because the path just doesn't exist without the Buddha. So this is kind of very fundamental. And of course the reason why that is the case is because the Buddha is the arising of right view. The Buddha sees the world as it actually is. That is the right view. And so the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path becomes available when the Buddha arises. Then he passes that right view on to other people, to us. And then the Noble Eightfold Path starts to work inside each one of us. The Noble Eightfold Path is really a psychological development, right? That's really what it is, comes down to. And that psychological development starts with right view. Right view means seeing the world as it actually is, not being deluded about the nature of the world. So this is already a very kind of important starting point with this, that the idea, the Buddha is a kind of requirement for this whole thing to start. Last time we looked at all the qualities of the Buddha, and this is what you can see here. You see this is the standard formula you have here for how we contemplate the Buddha. Yeah, Itipiso Bhagava Arahang. You have it over here. How do you highlight on this computer? How do you highlight on this one? You can't. You have to click to highlight. If I want to highlight text, how do you do that? Is that a way of doing that? No. Okay. What happened now? Escape. Okay. Yeah, there it's highlighted. Okay. So how did I do that?
Okay, you do drag. Go to the beginning.
Yeah.
With one finger you drag it. Like one finger.
And how do you stop it? How do you end it?
Stop dragging.
How do you take it off? Okay. All right.
And then you just let go.
I see.
Like that?
I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Great. Thank you. And how do I get it off again?
So escape. Or click. Just click. Single click as well will work. Okay, click the green. Yep. Green. The left-hand side. Maybe.
Click. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
You actually have to click.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm not really used to this thing. And how do you get rid of this one again?
So just click once. Just anywhere. Just click. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
One finger. You want to highlight again? Which one do you want to highlight?
Just there.
Araham, yeah. So it's like
I think
single finger and then press.
You have to press. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, that works even. So you press down and then do that and let go. So press hard.
Press harder. Okay. All right. But that's okay. I have to get used to using this one. It's a bit different from the other one. Okay. So this, what we see here, as I mentioned last time, this is the standard formula for the contemplation of the Buddha that you see here. And last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, I spent over an hour just analyzing this formula because it's very interesting. Yeah? If you understand the nature of this formula, you understand how the Buddha explained how we should contemplate the nature of the Buddha. That is what that whole formula is about. Arahang Samma Sambuddho, this particular formula right here. So then that is the explanation of the Buddha, and that is a very important contemplation in its own right, and we'll come back to this later on as well to see how this ties in with the rest of the path. It's actually an important part of it. But now I want to move on a little bit from last time, and we are now down here at this particular point. He has realized, etc. So he has realized with his own insight this world with its gods, maras and brahmas, this population with its ascetics and brahmins, gods and humans, and he makes it known to others. So this is in some ways just a little bit of expansion on what we saw in that previous paragraph last time. First the idea that the Buddha has realized this world, and of course that is a very important point in the Dhamma, that everything the Buddha teaches comes from his realization. The Buddha doesn't teach based on hearsay, he doesn't teach based on tradition, he doesn't teach based on what has been handed down in that culture. He only teaches based on insight, his own understanding of the nature of the world. And this is such an important thing to get, because very often people will argue that the Buddha taught rebirth, for example, because that was the cultural outlook at that time. But everything in the suttas are counter to that. Everything in the suttas, the Buddha is kind of he always going into things, understanding things for himself, never about just accepting things because it is part of the culture or whatever it is. Everything is about insight and understanding here. This is such an important point. And the Buddha says many places, I did not consider myself fully awakened until I had investigated these things. And there's a large number of things that he investigated to be able to feel that he could claim awakening, the full awakening. And this changes how you read the suttas. It means that when you read the suttas, you take things seriously. There's nothing that you dismiss out of hand because you think, this is just kind of ancient superstition or whatever. It may be ancient superstition in a few cases, because not all suttas are necessarily preserved 100%. But generally speaking, you can assume that what is in the suttas is based on insight and understanding. The Buddha would not have taught these things unless he knew it was true. So this little thing is very important right here. And of course, again, the insight relates mostly to this world, having realized this world, right? And this world, in this context, basically means the entirety of existence. Whatever is available to the human mind, whatever is available as a place of rebirth. You can see that because this world is then defined as having gods, maras, brahmas, this population. Basically it's everything that is attainable or available that constitutes this particular world. So again, it's similar to what we saw before. The idea that for the Buddha, if you're going to decide, if you're going to be awakened, you have to understand the whole possibilities of suffering and happiness in this world. What is the mechanism behind the rebirth to the various places? Are these rebirths permanent or are they impermanent? Are they happy or suffering? All of these things you have to investigate. Only then can you make this leap to let go of the whole thing. It's this famous triad that we find in the suttas, the asada, the adinava, and the nisarana. The asada is always the pleasure in something. The adinava is the drawbacks or the danger in something. The nisarana is the escape. And so you weigh up the pleasure, you weigh that up with the drawbacks or the danger, and then you decide the dangers are far worse. This is what it says throughout the suttas. The dangers are far worse than the pleasure, and then you decide for the escape. So this is necessary for the Buddha to really be able to understand happiness and suffering. He needs this large, broad-based view of what actually is possible for a human being. Yeah? So this is what this really is about. Yeah? So it looks like it's just a collection of gods, but really it is about rebirth, it's about karma, it's about the existence in this samsaric existence. Yes, sir. No, now it is the Buddha speaking here. Yeah, because now we have gone past all the beginning parts. Now it's the Buddha laying out the gradual training here. Yeah.
Is there a reason why that when we talk about this world here, it only talks about the good part of the world? We just talk about the bad part of the really pathetic part of the world.
Okay, let's. I'll talk a little bit about that now. What I think is going on here? Why he's talking about these specific things?
Well, I think anyway, I went through a series of lectures.
Yeah.
I think you missed out the part on the Jivaka part because I thought I missed out on your lecture. I went through all your recorded lectures. You missed that part.
Maybe it wasn't recorded properly. There's been some problems with the recordings and things.
But there were only 2 lectures so far.
I think so.
This is the third one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I attended all your lectures.
Okay.
You missed that big part.
Which part did I miss?
They only talk about all the
Yeah.
King's Council, promoting regarding this
Yeah.
stage or that stage, and then the Jiva was waiting to
Right.
take
Yeah.
the platform,
Yeah.
and that was where you thought, and then you jumped a bit part.
Really? Okay. Well, maybe I did. Okay. Come.
Really feeling very bad. It's the last time.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
I think it was you who missed out.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't know what to say. If you can show me next time which part I missed out, I'm very happy to do it. Yeah.
Taking the center stage.
Okay. At the very beginning of the sutta. Right. Okay. All right. I'll check it out to see if we can do it again. It's not the most important part, obviously, but it's interesting nonetheless. Yeah. Okay. So he has realized this world, right? And you notice here that this world is then spoken of in terms of gods, maras, and brahmas, and why these particular things. And my guess is that the reason why he talks about these particular things is because these are the things that were known about in that society. Yeah. So in that society, they had all their gods, the Shiva, the Vishnu, the Varuna, and all the kind of Brahmanical gods. It's some of them very similar to what you have in the present day. And Mara and Brahma, of course, a very important god in that ancient Brahmanical tradition. So what the Buddha is talking about here is the specific gods that existed in that culture already. So the point is to tell the people, he's now starting out his teaching, and he's telling people that actually I understand the world from the perspective of the existing culture. So these gods are the gods that were part of the Brahmanical teaching, but they're also roughly equivalent to the way the world works anyway. So they are good enough as a proxy for the world. Yeah. So this is kind of the idea here. So the Buddha is saying, I understand everything that you guys believe in, and of course more beyond that. And then you have the idea of this population with its ascetics and Brahmins. What does it mean to understand this population with its ascetics and Brahmins? And again, I think obviously it has to do with the various kinds of spiritual practice. The Buddha understands the extent to which these various spiritual practices can be successful, where they lead, what kind of rebirth they have. So it's like the Buddha is saying, I'm standing above all of these things. I have the bird's eye view on reality, and I can fit all of the various teachings, all the ascetics and Brahmins, their viewpoints, their teachings, how they work, how they don't work, into this larger view. So I understand these philosophies, I understand these various religious teachings, I understand the practices that they do, and where they lead and where they don't lead. Because that is the whole idea of enlightenment, is that you understand the human mind and the practices that are required to actually get to that point. Yes, and of course this gives the Buddha a lot of authority. Yeah, if you have the overview of how basically things work in the world and the kind of limits of other religions, it gives him a lot of authority once you accept that aspect of the Buddha's understanding here. Yes, so he understands, has realized this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, gods and humans, and he makes it known to others. Yeah, he tells other people about this. I have seen the reality. Listen. Yeah, if this is the way the world works. Listen to what I have to say here. And that, of course, is the beginning of the Dhamma. Once the Buddha teaches his insights, that's the beginning of the Dhamma in the world. And it's kind of fascinating when you read the suttas where the Buddha talks about his own life and his own insights and how he started the teaching. This is, in particular, you find this in the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 26, the Noble Search. And that the Buddha, after his awakening, he tries to teach people. And one of the famous scenes in that book, just after his awakening, and after the awakening of the Buddha is at his most powerful, right? Coming out of the awakening experience, completely pure, very, very still, bright as the sun. And he starts walking, and he's walking to find the first 5 ascetics who supported him before his awakening, because they had left him because he was starting to take food and all of these kind of things. And as he's walking along, he meets this ascetic called Upaka, and Upaka is a disciple of the Ajivakas. The Ajivakas, one of the famous sects in ancient India. And this Upaka, he meets the Buddha, just enlightened, and he looks at the Buddha and he says, wow. He doesn't say wow, but he says the equivalent of wow in ancient Pali language, right? Which is like, wow, your faculties are so bright. Your skin is so clear. What happened to you? Something like that. I can't remember the exact conversation. And then the Buddha says, well, I have achieved kind of the highest awakening here. And then Upaka says, well, who is your teacher? Because everyone is supposed to have a teacher. And then he goes on and says, I have no teacher. I'm self-awakened through my own insight. And at that point, Upaka can't take it anymore. And he kind of says, may it be so. And he wags his head and he walks off in the wrong direction. And this is kind of fascinating because it shows you how difficult it is to actually, first of all, to teach others, right? Even if you are enlightened, even if you are an extraordinarily powerful person, actually it's very hard to convince other people. You can imagine yourself, if you found some person in Perth who came up to you and said, I'm enlightened, you'd probably run away because you'd probably be frightened, right? Because it's scary when people say they're probably crazy, usually. And so that we are afraid of these things, And so people miss out. Upaka, he misses out, and he walks off in the wrong direction, and he remains the disciple of the Ajivakas. And then the Buddha carries on, and then he walks all the way to Benares, to Saranath, the deer park, and that's where the 5 disciples are, the 5 people, the 5 men who looked after him before his awakening. And then he he approaches them. And when he approaches them, they don't really want to have anything to do with the Buddha, right? Reluctantly they meet him and they kind of take his bowl, but then they kind of call him by his name rather than with an honorific title. Excuse me. And the Buddha really has to try very hard to convince them to be able to get through the message that actually I have achieved something special. So teaching the Dhamma is really, really difficult, especially in the beginning, because you have no disciples yet. There's nothing to prove that your path works. Once you have lots of disciples, it's easy, because other people will come along, because that's kind of how we are attracted. If other people believe it, we believe it too. But if no one else believes it, well, we are skeptical. We are kind of herd. We have this herd mentality as human beings, which in many ways probably is a good idea, because otherwise you have to figure out everything for yourself. So he makes it known to others. The Dhamma arises in the world. Now the teaching is available. And this is what this really is about here. And again, the main point, the main insight that he's giving here, rebirth and karma, especially rebirth here. This is what we see through and through in the suttas. It is such an extraordinarily important thing here. This is what the Buddha discovered on his night of awakening here. This was the main problem with the samsaric existence. This is kind of the issue, the thing at stake. So he teaches the Dhamma that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. It is meaningful and well phrased, and he reveals a spiritual practice that is entirely full and pure. So the Dhamma here is the teaching, yeah? So he gives a teaching, or he teaches this teaching. It is good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end. And this, I think, is a very significant part of how he explains the Dhamma. It's actually quite important. And if you go to the commentaries, they give you a large number of explanations for how this is to be understood. 9 different explanations, I think, something like that. But the basic idea, I think, is very simple. The basic idea, when something is good, kalyana means like, it's like a kalyana mitta, a good friend. In other words, something that supports you, something that helps you. So good in the beginning here means that it has a good effect in the beginning. And of course, part of having a good effect is that it makes you better, it makes you more happy. It starts to reduce your suffering from the very get-go, at the very beginning. And this is such an important thing, because the Buddhist path is not the path where we kind of experience a lot of pain and then kind of down the track the happiness comes. That is not really how the Buddhist path works. And this is a misunderstanding, and this is a misunderstanding even in large parts of the Buddhist world. But the general practice of the Dhamma should be positive from the very start. It should start to give results straight away when you live with more kindness and compassion, with more care, with more circumspection. Straight away you start feeling better about yourself. Not always. There will be times when maybe it is hard and difficult, but as a general idea, it is good from the very beginning. And this also has an effect for our meditation practice. Meditation practice is not something that you need to do to really be exhausting and painful and difficult and all of these kind of things. Even meditation practice should be fun, it should be enjoyable from the beginning. And if it isn't enjoyable, investigate, what is going on. Learn to relax properly, learn to sit back, learn to get the right posture, learn not to go to the meditation object too quickly, learn all of these basic things, learn how to gently nudge the mind in the right direction so that the mind can overcome the defilements without the use of force, without the use of all this willpower. And then you learn to enjoy meditation practice. And this is so important, right? It is so important because unless you enjoy meditation, you will not be able to sustain it. And it doesn't give much results anyway. It's one of those beautiful messages that you find in the Anapanasati Sutta, the Sutta on the mindfulness of breathing, where it talks about meditation practice. And every step of that sutta is a positive step. Every step is about joy, peace, calming down. Everything is enjoyable. And so there is no need for, all this contemplation of pain and all of these kind of things. It's actually not really required. And that is such a relief when you realize that. So good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end. Everything about this path is a positive movement away from suffering, towards happiness, contentment, satisfaction, peace. It's all positive. And then you have these words here, meaningful and well phrased, sāatang, savyanjanang. And sāatang is, you see it over here, these words, the Pali words. Oh, no, okay, I have to click. Okay, I'm going to learn this eventually, but maybe not in this lifetime, but eventually. No, okay, sāatang, And atta means purpose, goal. It's the goal of things. It is the aim, what we're trying to achieve. And so, sāatang, meaningful is not wrong translation, but it also means something that sāatang, with a goal, with a purpose, with an aim. It's a path that has an aim. And this is a very interesting point, because from the Buddhist perspective, and all of these things, of course, are from the Buddhist perspective, A lot of the spiritual teachings in the world or philosophies in the world, they don't lead out of samsara completely. Yeah, they may lead to a higher plane, they may lead to a good rebirth, they may lead to some many beautiful things. But from a Buddhist point of view, because the sense of self is not overcome, it is the overcoming of the sense of self that is the specific Buddhist thing. Yeah, because that isn't overcome, the samsaric journey continues on, but not the Buddhist path. The Buddhist path has a real goal, it has a real purpose, it has an endpoint. And that is what makes the Buddhist path unique, precisely because you're dealing with the very root cause of the problem, which is the sense of self. Sa-attang, it has a real purpose. So meaningful is not wrong, but to me this is more meaningful, to put it this way. So, okay. And then you have sa-vyanjanang. Yeah, vyanjanang here is like phrasing. Sa means with, so it has phrasing. In other words, well phrased, right? And this is another kind of important point, is that the Buddha, when he phrases the Dhamma, he takes a lot of care to phrase it in the right way. Yeah, it's not kind of random what the Buddha says. He doesn't just talk. He phrases things very carefully. And when you read the suttas, you see this incredible consistency in the suttas with how the Buddha uses words from different contexts, and kind of everything kind of meshes together into this beautiful tapestry. The Buddha is like a tapestry, everything kind of meshed together in a certain way. So it creates this big picture. And that big picture is coherent. It works together. And of course, it is a picture of Nibbana ultimately, and how to get there. So the phrasing is very careful, and what that means is that when you read the suttas, you read them with care. Yeah, you look at every word. You don't kind of go quickly past something. So, yeah, that probably doesn't mean anything. No, every word probably matters, and every word you read may relate to something somewhere else. And you start to build up this cross-reference in your mind, seeing how everything fits together, how this tapestry, this picture of the Dhamma kind of comes out. Savyanjanang, it gives a different attitude to these teachings when you read them. And I always like to say that many people, they enjoy reading contemporary Dhamma books, and I can see why, because often contemporary Dhamma books can be very beautiful. Yeah, they're often kind of poetry, and it reads very nicely, it flows beautifully, the words rhyme. Or it can be a Dhamma book by an inspiring writer who writes in prose. Again, it can be very beautiful in many ways. But when you try to understand what the person is saying, it can often be very hard to understand. When you try to kind of cross-reference and figure out how it works with the suttas, actually it can be very difficult to figure it out. And the more used you get to the suttas, to the word of the Buddha, the more you understand that these are the teachings that are the best phrased of all teachings. If you want to understand what Buddhism is about, this is where you should go, because this is where it is the most clear, this is where it is the most coherent, concise, well put. This is where the Dhamma is found. And also, if you want to, some people talk about, what happens when you die, you get reborn somewhere. If you want to be able to talk Dhamma in your next life or even in this life with people of other traditions, if you know the suttas, you know the thing that all practitioners of Dhamma have in common. So you have that commonality with everyone. It was very useful if you want to discuss the Dhamma or understand the Dhamma, etc. So the Buddha's teaching is special. And then he says he reveals a spiritual practice. It's the Brahmacharya, the practice of Brahma, quite literally. And of course, the Brahma is famous for the loving kindness and the giving up of the sensory realm. So it's like kind of a high realm, the Brahmacharya. So we try to practice in that same way. And this Brahmacharya is, he says here, it says kevala paripunnang. Kevala paripunnang, parisuddhang, etc. Paripunnang means complete. Parisuddhang means pure. Kevala means entirely or completely. Completely complete, completely pure. And again, these things are also very significant. Every word here is significant. That's exactly what I was just saying. Every word here matters. If something is entirely complete, if it is complete, well, what that means is that when you read the suttas, it is enough. You don't need anything apart from the suttas. The suttas are sufficient. Maybe you need to draw out the meaning a little bit. Maybe you need to explain what is going on. But you don't need any additional factors on the path. You don't need kind of the ninefold path, or the, or the 6 spiritual faculties, or the 8 enlightenment factors, right? It is sufficient what is there. And elsewhere in the suttas, the Buddha says, there is nothing missing in my teaching, and there is nothing superfluous. And this is exactly what this is getting at. Nothing is missing, nothing is superfluous. Nothing you can throw out, but everything in there matters. It is complete in its own right. And again, very, very important to remember that, because it means that when you read the commentaries, you read other aspects of the Buddhist teaching, they should only explain what is in the suttas. They should never add things to the suttas. There should never be anything new, right? Only an explanation of what is already there. It is complete in its own right. And because nothing is missing, and because it is complete, nothing is superfluous, you can't take anything out. You can't take out right view. You can't take out any aspects of right view. You can't take out right samadhi, right stillness on the path. Everything that's there is important. Nothing is superfluous. Nothing is missing here. And then you have the idea of entirely pure parisuddhang. And it means something similar, I think. I think the idea here is that everything on the path is pure. Everything leads towards purification. There's nothing in the suttas which leads in the wrong way. I was writing a short essay on how Buddhism can help world peace. And the idea there, and that's one of the things I said, that you don't find anything in the suttas by which you can justify violence or oppression or conflict in the world. If you are a bad person and you want to use the suttas to support your conflict or your violence or whatever, there's nothing there that can really be used to support conflict or violence. Why? Because everything is pure. Everything is going in one direction only. Everything is about living in the right way. And this is quite extraordinary when you think about it, because there isn't really any scriptures like that anywhere else in the world which have that extraordinary purity about them. The Buddha scriptures are really unique. I remember in Myanmar, in Burma, Myanmar, when they were kind of having the problems, the Rohingyas and the Burmese were kind of fighting it out and all of these kind of things. And there were some monks who were trying to justify the violence against the Rohingyas. And to justify it, they couldn't justify it in the suttas. So what they had to do, they had to go to some scripture that was much later. And sometimes in some of those later scriptures, you can actually find justification for violence if you look really hard. But not in the suttas themselves, only in later history books and that sort of thing. So they are pure, they are leading in one direction only. There's nothing in there which is ambivalent or uncertain. And everything matters. So, anyone disagreeing so far? Anyone thinks this is... Yes, Amrita?
The word Brahmacharya also sounds like the practice of Brahma. And it's also the same as spiritual practice.
The word is made up. The root meaning of the word is Brahma's practice, the practice of Brahma. And and of course, the Brahma realm is the jhana realms. So there are realms where the mind is full of loving kindness and very still and all of these kind of things. So it is the mind which is out of the sensual world. You're beyond the sensual world. It's fully purified from sensuality and the 5 hindrances, and you just have pure love and pure compassion. So that is why this path is a path. So that's why Brahmacharya usually means celibacy, right? It means a path without any kind of sexuality, precisely because it is that same thing as Brahma. You've gone beyond the sensual world. So this is kind of the idea behind Brahmacharya, and that's why it's called Brahmacharya, because you're conducting your conduct. You're trying to approximate to be like Brahma. So that's kind of what this is about. So it means the spiritual practice, but it also means, as you say, the conduct of Brahma. Yeah. Yes, please, Vincent. This means to proclaim. So he proclaims, yeah, he proclaims, and what he proclaims is this word over here, Brahmacharya. This is what he proclaims. Well, Bhante Sujata has reveals here. This is the word he uses over here. So this pakaseti is translated over here as reveals. Yeah? So he proclaims or reveals the spiritual practice. Seti, yes. It's just the ending of the word. This is a verb, so it depends on what the ending is. If it is a past, for example, he proclaimed it in the past, then you will have sesi on the end, depending on how it is in the sentence. Yeah, it's still the same word. It's just the ending different. Just like in English, you have, to walk and walks. What's the difference between walk and walks? Well, it's just the ending. It just doesn't really make any difference. Walk, walks, walked, walking. It's all the same idea. Yeah. It's Pajja. Pajjang is the population over here. That's Pajjang. Yeah. Pajjang is, the word Prajapati. Prajapati is kind of one of the gods of the Brahmanical system. And Prajapati means the lord of the population, the lord. Yeah, Pati is like lord. Praja or Pajja is the population. So that God is the lord of all the people. Same word as we find here, Prajapati. Yeah. All right. So let's go on a little bit more. Please feel free to stop me at any time if you have any comments or questions or whatever. So he reveals this powerful spiritual practice. And of course, because he does that, then a householder hears that teaching, or a householder's child, or someone reborn in some clan. Yeah, so this is the beginning of the disciples. And here you have the householder, which literally means, the Pali word here is Gahapati. You see it over there. And Gahapati means the lord of the house. And so householders were like the kind of standard units of Indian society. There would be a house, and in that house you would have many generations. Yeah, this was like people lived in the old days, many generations in the same house. And then you would have the servants, and you had the workers, and sometimes slaves, all within that same house. And then they might have some kind of business that they were doing or something like that. And that was part of that householder life. So this was almost like the establishment in ancient India. The householder was the leader of this unit called a house. And so a householder would hear this teaching, or a householder's child. Child is not perhaps the best translation. I would say maybe offspring. It's not like a small child. It's more like the second generation, right? It could be any age. It could be 40 years old. It's just the second generation of householders, that's all. Or someone reborn in some clan. This could be anyone, like maybe the workers in the house or something like that. So this is the idea. These are kind of the most common people in ancient India, and that's probably why they are mentioned here. And even people of very high social status, like the Brahmins or the Kshatriyas, could be householders in a certain way. So they hear the teaching, right? And what happens when they hear the teaching? What happens is this. It's exciting, isn't it? What happens when you hear the teaching? Okay. They gain faith in the realized one. So when you hear the teaching, let's stop there, because this is already quite interesting. You gain faith in the realized one when you hear the Dhamma. And so what does this mean, to gain faith in the Buddha? What exactly is this referring to? Because this word faith has a very kind of set meaning in the English language, because it is often related to Christianity, it is related to all these various theistic religions, and their faith there has a very kind of particular meaning, which often has nothing to do with rationality, nothing to do with common sense even sometimes. Yeah? I believe because it's crazy. That's kind of one of the things sometimes you hear in Christianity, which to me is very strange and a very bad way of having faith, in my opinion. In Buddhism, it's almost the exact opposite. You will notice here that you gain faith when you hear the teaching, right? It's the content of the teaching that gives rise to faith. And because it is the content of the teaching, because you can see that these teachings are powerful, they are interesting, they're saying something about your life, how you can become a better person, more happy, more contented, give up suffering, because they have a realistic view or realistic way of putting forward these ideas that you can actually get a better life. That's why you gain confidence rather than faith. Or confidence is an important aspect of faith here. You're listening to something that is truly powerful. Yeah, so you gain faith because you understand these teachings are really worthwhile listening to. But then there is another aspect to faith. And then that is, of course, we have just seen before the explanation of what the Buddha is like. And I went into that in quite a lot of details to explain the nature of the Buddha, what it is like to meet the Buddha probably. And so an important component of this is also seeing the qualities of that person who gives these teachings, right? There is a congruence there between the actual teaching and the person behind it. It's not as if the Buddha acts in one way and says something else. No, the way he acts and the way he speaks are congruent with each other. Here is someone who is truly peaceful. Here is someone who is truly compassionate. Here is someone who doesn't really have any delusion, but has a clarity of mind that is extraordinary. And so that is the faith aspect of this thing. Confidence and faith going together. But because you have to choose one word, he has chosen faith here. And that faith component of this confidence is actually also very important, because faith is the emotional aspect of the confidence. If you feel a lot of faith in something, you feel inspired or whatever, then that kind of builds up this positive feeling inside. And this is so important on the spiritual path. You see this again and again in the suttas, the way to bring up joy and happiness. Very often it is based precisely on this faith idea of faith here. Confidence in the teaching conjoined with the faith that comes from seeing the results of the path. Sometimes even now these days you see people who are practicing really well, someone like Ajahn Brahm, and it's like, wow, that's amazing that we have people like this. And you feel inspired because you see the congruence with the teaching on the one hand and the beautiful way that is expressed through practice on the other hand, coming together in this way. So this is faith in Buddhism, powerful emotions conjoined with understanding. And for this reason, in Buddhism, faith and wisdom always go together. They are not separate things. The more wisdom you have, the more faith you will have, Because the more wisdom means that the more insight you have into these teachings, the more you understand what is going on, and the more, wow, this is really cool. And then you kind of become, that faith, emotional aspect also arises with that. So in Buddhism, wisdom and faith always go together. Right view and faith always go together. Insight and faith always go together. These are not really separable at all. And this is again one of those really unique things about Buddhism, that it is your appreciation, your understanding of reality, that is what gives rise to faith. And when you have the full insight into the nature of reality, only then does your faith reach the maximum, because they always have to go together. There are so many little things like this that make Buddhism unique as a teaching. No other schools, no other teachings really have these kind of ideas. And there's so many, when you start adding them up, it makes Buddhism into something really, really special in this world. The more you start to, the more insight you get into these little things, the way it views reality. So you gain faith in the Buddha, you see the example, you hear the teaching, they are congruent, they work together in this way. And when that faith arises, what happens? Then you reflect, you start thinking, wow, this is true, there must be some consequences. What are the consequences? these are the consequences. Living in a house is cramped and dirty, but the life of one go forth is wide open. This is one of the consequences of gaining faith in the Buddha. Yeah? You realize the limits of the household life. What are those limits? It's cramped and dirty. So what does this mean? Well, cramped here is this word over here, sambado, and this is a word that you find in a number of places in the suttas, and the way that it is used is that as your mind becomes purified, as you gain samadhi, the deeper that samadhi is, the deeper you are going on that path, the less cramped is your mind. It's like you are giving up the crampedness of the mind. And this is why samadhi in the sutras is always called mahagata or appamana. It is large, it is without limits. The limits have been taken away. The crampedness of the mind have been taken away here. Yeah, so this is kind of, especially when you get to the jhanas, these are the liberation from this crampedness of the sambada on the path. But the household life is the opposite, because in the household life almost always includes attachments. It's very hard to live the household life without some attachments. If you are in a family, you're going to be attached to your partner, you're going to be attached to your kids, you're going to be attached to other people in that household. Yeah, it's almost impossible to avoid that completely because of the nature of familial feelings and these things. So this is the nature of the household life is always going to have some of that interest in other people, the attachment, the craving, the desire for kind of for worldly things is part of that, and it's very difficult to extract yourself completely unless you live the household life more like a monastic. And actually there are people who do that. They live by themselves in a household life, and for some reason they can't become monastics or whatever, and then it starts to approximate to the monastic life. And then different, it is more likely or more possible that you can achieve similar things that you can achieve in the monastic life in that case. But basically the mind tends to be contracted by attachments and desires, and leaving those things behind often, not always, but often will mean leaving the household life. And this is what this person is thinking here. Then you have the idea that not only is it cramped, but have over here it is also dirty. So the household life is dirty. The Pali here is literally rajapato. Rajapato means rajopato. I can't see. Rajopato means a path of dust. Yeah, raja, so rajo is dust, pato is path. And so it's a path of dust. And the idea of dust in the suttas, dust is usually a metaphor for defilements of the mind. You often talk about people having little dust in their eyes, and little dust in their eyes basically means little defilements. You have clarity of sight. You can only see clearly if you have few defilements of the mind. The desire, the ill will, and the delusion of the mind. These are part of the household life, part of this path of dust. Much more likely to have them there than when you live the monastic life. Remember here we're talking about the ideal kind of monastic life. We're talking about the usual kind of household life. We are comparing those two things. We're not comparing a bad monastic life with the optimal household life. If you compare the bad monastic life with the optimal household life, you're probably better off as a householder. But if you think of the kind of optimal monastic life and compare it to the usual household life, that is what we're comparing it with here. So that's why then it says the life of one gone forth is wide open. Take away the hindrances, take away the limitations, take away the obstacles. That's why it opens up. And these are, of course, especially the obstacles of the heart. The things that block your mind from becoming great and large and expanding and encompassing the whole world. You remove those things, and as you remove those things, it becomes then the abhokasa, the wide openness of life gone forth. This is what that life is like. So there's this vision here. You can see the vision here is really a vision of giving up the narrowness, the confinement of the sensory world, away from that towards the large mind, the mind of samadhi, the mind that actually grows out of the sensory world and experience something far, far beyond ordinary experience. This is what this person is starting to see. That is why they're willing to give up the household life. Any comments on that? Pabbaja, going forth, usually means becoming a monastic. Yeah. So pabbaja, upasampada, there are two different words. That means going forth, so it means becoming a monk. Yeah. Pabbaja sometimes means becoming like a novice monk, so the first stage. Upasampada often means the full monk, but sometimes they are used synonymously to mean the full ordination as a monastic. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that sometimes we divide the world into lay people and monastics, but there's also a lot of gray zones in between, right? It's not as simple as that. So you can argue maybe that some lay people who live almost like monastics, they can be called, they have done a pabbaja because they're living according to the 10 precepts maybe even, right? Or at least to the 8 precepts. And so they're getting very close. So there is like a sliding scale. It's not like one here and one there. It's like a sliding scale across, more or less pabbaja, if you like, more or less gone forth. So yes, that's a good point. Yeah. It's okay. Thank you. Nayana, do you want to say something here?
Sorry to go back to the qualities of Dhamma.
Yeah, no, please.
There are some translators translate the word akaliko as timeless, but I understood from you that it's not timeless, but it's more towards you can see the results within this life.
The word doesn't actually occur here.
I understand.
Not part of this one, but it is. You're right. It is a standard when you say svakato, bhagavata dhammo, sandittiko, akaliko. There it is, and the qualities of the Dhamma. It's usually in the sutras it's a synonym for sandittika,
right.
And sandittika means visible in this life. Sandittika is the opposite of samparayika. Samparayika means relating to future life. Sandittika means relating to this life. It means that everything in the Dhamma can be experienced here and now. You don't have to go into the future life to know, Sometimes in some religion you don't know until you die whether it's true or not, and then it might be too late, right? And then akalika is used in very much the same way. It's not, don't have to wait till the future life or whatever. It can be seen right here in this life.
However, so the word timeless is also, isn't it a quality of Dhamma? Because what was relevant back then, 2,600 years ago, is the same human conditions, same laws of nature stands, and the teaching stands true. So is there a word that describes that?
Well, I think the Buddha talks about his teaching as the understanding the nature of reality, and the nature of reality is going to be the same. It's not going to change. I think it's kind of obvious. He says in the Sutta that dependent origination is always true, whether there's a Buddha or not. It's always true. These things, just the nature of the world. So he says that kind of thing. He calls it Dhammatiti. Dhammatiti means this. The titi means like to stand or remain. It's the remaining of the Dhamma. It stands in that way. It remains in that way, regardless. But you're right, akalika can be interpreted in different ways. It doesn't have to mean what I said. It could maybe mean what you say. It can also mean that, in a sense, the Dhamma is available not just in this life, but right now. If right now you turn your mind in the right direction, you will have some benefits, of that. And straight away you maybe feel something positive or whatever, because you're turning your mind in the right direction. So they can have many different meanings, but... So it depends a bit on the context and how it is used. Yes, sir. Eddie.
Ajahn Brahmali, so far the sutta, is about praising the teaching of the Buddha, is it?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah?
See, before he passed away, the people asked him, Brother Musa, what actually is your teaching about?
Yeah.
And he said, my teaching is about suffering and the ending of suffering.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, okay, we are praising now, will be about our mind, our body, all this, like the Four Noble Truth, Eightfold Path, it's about all. If we were to sort of bring this into, we can see a clear picture, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is absolutely about mind and the body, and it's about dukkha and the ending of dukkha. That's exactly what it is about. And in a sense, this is what this here also points to once you see it in the right way. So it's all, you're quite right. It's all kind of pointing to the same direction.
So you can see more like a complete picture or what?
Yeah. But the thing about, the nice thing about the Buddha's teaching is that he approaches all of these problems from different angles. And when you see them from many different angles, after a while you start to get this big picture. You start to understand what is going on. If you see it maybe only from one angle, maybe it doesn't speak to you because of your inclination and your mind state. But then you hear from another angle, you think, wow, now I start to get what's going on. And then eventually you build up this picture what the Dhamma is about.
Just quickly, so it comes out to be, like the teaching. How the teaching relates to us, I remember when I first come to Buddhism, I read the books, the small little booklets. Wow, this is me, So I am myself relating to the Dhamma,
Yeah. No, of course.
How it can help me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, exactly. It is precisely about each one of us. Yeah, indeed. I'll have a quick look at the questions from outside. This is from Ananda. Okay. Does the phrase Dhamma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, refer to Sila, Samadhi, and Panya? Yes, it can absolutely refer to that, because you get the benefit of Sila, you get the benefit of Samadhi, you get the benefit of Panya. So, absolutely. So, you're very welcome to join from home, Ananda. As long as we hear from you, we know you are alive and well. That's good. So, so thanks for asking. So this is a question from Taiwan, from Hong Chao. Hello, Hong Chao in Taiwan. Nice to have you here. It appears that ChatGPT can translate and understand Pali texts. Is it feasible to use ChatGPT as an aid in reading the suttas and the Atthakatha? Thanks, Venerable Sir. Okay, that's a little bit on the side of what we are talking about. Let me answer this question at the end. So please hang in there until the end, and then I'll answer these questions because they are a little bit on the end there. So there's two more questions here, but I'll take those as we come towards the end. I'll be going a little bit longer. So, so this is what this person thinks, right? And this person can be a man or a woman, because a householder's child can also be a woman, obviously. The Pali word is putta over here, and putta is a word that can mean son or daughter, depending on the both. Either son or daughter. And then he says, it is not easy for someone living at home to live the spiritual life utterly full and pure, like a polished shell. It is not easy, and of course we want to make the spiritual path as easy as possible. I've sometimes heard people say that when the spiritual path is difficult, you can make faster progress. But I would not recommend to make it difficult. It's difficult enough as it is, right? How many people become enlightened in this world? How many enlightened monks and nuns are there, even though they practice the highway to enlightenment? Not many. It is a rare thing to find enlightened people in this world. So please don't think that you're going to make it difficult so you can go faster on the path. Make it as easy as possible. That is the right way of thinking about this. It is hard enough as it is. And you have this nice idea here that you want to be like a polished shell. You want to have that mind like a polished shell, a mind like gold that radiates and is bright and beautiful. This is kind of the idea of the bright mind. Compared to a polished shell, I take it to be the mind that really this refers to. Other places as gold, other places like a diamond, shining, radiating, beautiful, without blemishes. That is the ideal. And that is much easier to do when you kind of leave behind the cares and all the duties of the household life and all the crampedness of the household life. So that is really what you want to do here. And then this person thinks, why don't I shave off my hair and beard, dress in ochre robes, and go forth from the lay life to homelessness? Yeah, so this then is right intention. So far we have seen right view. First of all, the Buddha giving rise to right view, then that right view being passed on to other people, when the Buddha teaches in the world, and then when that right view gets established, right intention arises. And this here is really the right intention to renounce, if you like. This is often what we call renunciation, when you give up the household life. But of course, the real renunciation is not actually becoming a monastic. The real renunciation is the giving up of interest in the five sense world so that you can access the deep meditation states. That is the real renunciation. It is possible to be a monastic and still be enmeshed in the five sense world. But that is the hard part. And so it's possible to be a layperson as well and give up that five sense world to some extent. But this is still the movement in that direction, the intention to renounce, the intention to give up. It begins here with giving up the lay life. And this is kind of interesting because it means that if you want to practice the gradual training, if you want to go all the way and get all the results of the gradual training, the Buddha is here recommending the monastic path. He's saying this is really what you want to do if you want to have success in the monastic training here. So this is kind of an important point. So it is an encouragement to move in that direction if you can, because this is the way that is going to lead to that goal. So this person thinks this, and often it takes a while from the first thought till you actually do it. It doesn't happen straight away, because you know what it's like. It takes time for these things to mature within you. And after some time, they give up a large or small fortune, a large or small family circle. They shave off hair and beard, dress in ochre robes, and go forth from lay life to homelessness. After some time, after having thought about this for a while, realized it must be true, kind of preparing, getting everything ready in the life, giving things up, giving things away, whatever it might be, giving up a large or a small fortune. It doesn't matter how large your fortune is. It is still an attachment. It's still something that blocks you from the higher reaches of the mind. No fortune that you have can ever be equivalent to the beauty of the mental development on the path. So large or small is irrelevant. If you are the king of the world, still you want to go forth and become a monastic. Large or small family circle, doesn't matter how many friends you have. Especially Facebook friends, they count for nothing. And then, and so you kind of give up all of these mates, and then you decide you're going to go forth, because all the worldly happiness is nothing compared to the happiness that is, at least in principle, attainable on the monastic path. So then you shave off your hair, and you shave off your beard, you dress in the ochre robes. Ochre, because the color is a bit varied, and ochre is a very varied color, and then you go forth. So, when you go forth, the Sangha comes into existence. So first the Buddha, the Dhamma, and then the Sangha. And the Sangha comes into existence when someone has the right intention derived from the right view on the path. And then they go forth, they become a monastic. So, what do you think? No comments? Everyone very quiet? Okay, good. You want to go forth, Eddie? You want to become a monk?
I remember reading Ajahn Chah's book,
Yeah.
He says lay person also can get enlightenment.
Yeah,
You don't have to be a monastic.
we have to distinguish between can get enlightenment and is most likely to get enlightenment. The two different things. So can, in principle, but the idea of what is the ideal circumstance is different. It's like Ajahn Brahm likes that if you want to go to Sydney, you can go to Sydney in two ways. You can take the plane or you can walk. You can get to Sydney by walking, but the plane is more efficient and more likely to get you there. So this is the difference, right? There's a difference there between what is possible and what is most likely.
Also, sorry,
yeah.
not arguing with you.
Please argue.
He also said, lay people, chances are better, You know, why? Because they experience more suffering, and then they can. But I read this,
It's not about how much
it's in
suffering.
This book, I remember that now.
It's not about how much suffering you experience. It's about your understanding of suffering here, and about how you deal with it. The First Noble Truth is an insight, it's an understanding. It's not about the First Noble Truth is not about experiencing as much suffering as possible. It's about understanding suffering here. That's why suffering is often about things like rebirth. You can never experience rebirth by feeling your suffering in the present life. It's a broader outlook and broader view on reality here.
It's not me. It's from the book.
Yeah.
They call Ajahn Chah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying that. I don't know that particular teaching from Ajahn Chah. I don't know, how reliable it is or what it is. I will ask Ajahn Brahm about it when I see him. But I'm just saying from what I see from the suttas, this is what it looks like. The Buddha is here, obviously encouraging the going forth.
Sorry, because it's just I remembered. I remembered. This thing, because sometimes certain things we read, you remember, isn't it? Yeah. So he mentioned that in the book.
Yeah. But remember that it's all about time and place, and there are some lay people who practice incredibly well and who practice better than most monastics. So it depends on the situation. This is like an average of people, the average layperson compared to the average monastic, And that is really what this is about. But it's not absolute. And as you say, if a layperson practices really well, they can achieve these things, So it depends on it's not really one-sided. And Ajahn Chah, he may have said that in a particular situation, maybe he wanted to encourage some of the lay people that were there who were practicing really well already, and maybe he wanted to give them a bit of encouragement. And of course that's great, And there are many people in the Buddha society who are really good practitioners. And sometimes, lay people are more impressive than some monastics. It's true, and that's because they do really well and practice in the right way here. So it's not one-sided, and I certainly don't want to discourage anyone. That's an important point, All right. So they enter the monastic life, and then it goes on. Once they have gone forth, they live restrained in the monastic code, conducting themselves well and seeking alms in suitable places. Seeing danger in the slightest fault, they keep the rules they've undertaken. They act skillfully by body and speech. They're purified in livelihood and accomplished in ethical conduct. They guard the sense doors, have mindfulness and situational awareness, and are content. There's a lot there. So let's just start from the beginning. So once you go forth, you live restrained by the monastic code, conducting yourself well, seeking alms in suitable places. So this is in many ways like the factors 3, 4, and 5 on the Noble Eightfold Path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is what comes in here now. The monastic code is what helps you in your ethical development, and so this is what is going on here. So you live restrained by the monastic code. And then you have conducting themselves well. This is achara over here, or achara rather, which is conducting yourself well. So these are the kind of lesser conduct. So first of all, you have the monastic code, and then you have all the lesser conducts as well of a monastic, like the whole Vinaya Pitaka is full of all kind of rules. I was just mentioning this really odd rule that I mentioned on Friday night about the you shouldn't take the cloth from a corpse that is still fresh. You should wait till the corpse is cool, then you can take the cloth from the corpse. And I was saying that's why the monastics have so many rules, because we have these kind of rules as well. It's kind of extraordinary. So these are the kind of the Acharya, the right conduct. It's like being polite in society, living in the right way, following the customs of the time, as well as the small ethical aspects of the path as well. So you conduct yourself well. And one of the important things here that we shall see is that as a monastic or as a layperson, it is never enough just to follow rules. If all you do is follow rules, say that you follow the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, or as a monastic 227 plus precepts, if all you do is follow rules, then it is going to be good, but it's not really going to be enough. And one reason is because all of these rules have loopholes. Yeah, you can find ways around them. You can do things that are not good and still keep these rules. Yeah, this is kind of the point here. So you want to actually make sure that you are ethical from an internal point of view. Are you acting purely? Are you coming from ill will? Are you coming from desires? Are you coming from delusion? Or are you coming from the opposite? The metta, the karuna, the wisdom within, that is what decides ultimately what is really good conduct, what is the motivating factor that drives your speech, drives your actions, drives your thinking mind. And you want to also not just to avoid the bad, but you want to do the good. Yeah, you don't do the bad things, but you do good things. You actively say things that are kind, gentle, go to the heart of people, bring people together. You do actions of kindness towards people, helping out if you possibly can. All of these things are a very important part of this. So when we talk about rules, the rules are like the minimum requirement, and then you do more on top of that. So you conduct yourself well, seeking alms in suitable places. Suitable places here is this word gochara, you see it over here. Gochara. Yeah, gochara literally means go is a cow, chara is like conduct or movement, the movement of the cow. Where do cows move? They move in the pastures, in the fields. That's where they graze, right? So that's where the cows are. So the grazing ground is gochara, is where you graze, is where you hang out. Where do the monks graze? On alms round, right? We go on alms round, that's kind of the grazing ground of the monks. Yeah, we're going to go around with a bowl, people put delicious, beautiful food in it. Actually, these days they don't just put rice in it and we kind of help ourselves, but anyway, you know what I mean. So the gochara of monastics is going into the village in the morning, receiving alms, or if you live at Bodhinyana Monastery, going from the first story to the ground, or second story to the first story, and then you kind of, people put rice in the bowl. But the idea is that you have a gochara, is where you get your alms food. Yeah, this is the main gochara of monastics, and it's important that you get your alms in a suitable place. Yeah, it should not be in dodgy places. It should not be in places that can arouse kind of bad defilements of the mind, whether it's ill will or passions or delusion or whatever. So you go to suitable places and you do this in the right way. This is the gochara of a monastic. This is the lower gochara. You can expand this to mean anything that you do as a monastic, yeah? Not just going on alms round. The reason why alms round is kind of especially pointed out here is because alms round is the one time when a monastic tends to go into the village. But anytime you go into the village, anytime you go out of the monastery, you should always be a suitable place, a suitable which doesn't give rise to all kind of problems for yourself. Achara, gochara, sampanno. And then as you practice your meditation, your gochara, your grazing ground, it changes, right? When you go to the village, yes, then the grazing ground is, getting people giving you food in your alms bowl. But when you go back to meditate, you have a different gochara. The gochara then is the 4 satipatthanas. The gochara there is the grazing ground of the mind. It's where the mind hangs out when you meditate in the right way. And that is the 4 satipatthanas, the mindfulness of breathing, which is part of that, the metta meditation, all of these kind of things. That's the higher kind of gochara of the mind, starting off with the basic ones, going up to the higher ones. Anumatesu vajesu vayadasavi. Yeah? Seeing danger in the slightest faults. And this is another beautiful idea in the suttas. Beautiful idea because it's easy to think on this Buddhist path that as long as we kind of keep the main sila, as long as we do the right thing, we're going to be okay. But very often it is in the small things that we really make advancements on the path. Because the big things, of course we have to do the big things. Yeah, we can't shout at people, we can't do bad things in this world. That's kind of obvious. But if you really want to make fast progress, you have to purify the small things on the path. How am I thinking about other people? Do I have consistent loving kindness or not? Do I have compassion for the perpetrators of crime in the world because I don't really understand? Or do I get angry when I read the newspaper? It's very easy to get angry, right, when you see all the bad things in the world. But it's not helpful. It's not going to work on the spiritual path. Instead, you have to have a larger view of compassion for everyone who is doing bad things because they don't know what they're doing. So you look at your conduct, you understand that every time you take even the smallest step in the wrong direction, you are letting yourself down, you're heading in the wrong way, and it's going to be really problematic for you. Yeah? So you understand the importance, the significance of the small things. You don't allow yourself to be led astray, even when it comes to minor things on the path. You never say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's only a small thing. No, you find out how you can improve instead. That is when the path becomes really powerful. Always moving forward, always having yoniso manasikara, always doing the right thing, not allowing these things to slip between your fingers and pretend they don't matter. You undertake the training rules, and these are the monastic code again. So this is the idea behind the monastic code and also the broader idea of how to act appropriately here. I'll just finish off this paragraph. Most of this we'll talk about later on, and then we can have a bit more discussion towards the end. They act skillfully by body and speech. Yeah? You can again see that it is not enough with the monastic code. The Buddha then adds on top of that you act skillfully by body and speech. The monastic code is only the beginning, but there's more to it. Skillfully here has also the idea of positive virtues, using speech and body in a positive way. They are purified in livelihood and accomplished in ethics. Purified in livelihood means for a monastic that you don't make a living by all kind of other things. You don't have a kind of, if you give me food, I will act as your doctor or anything like that. You just live as a monastic life and you're supported because you live well as a monastic. And you are accomplished in ethics. Yeah. Sila sampanno is the word, accomplished in ethics over there. And then you guard the sense doors. You have mindfulness and situational awareness, and you are content. And all of these things are going to be expanded on in quite a bit of detail, so I'm not going to talk about it now, because we're going to look at this when we come to session 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, of this particular sutta, as we go through it. And we're going to look at all of these things in quite a bit of detail. But this is really the kind of the ethics of the path, right? All the way down to contentment there is part of the ethics of this path. So, I'm going to stop at this point because it is a good place to stop. So, are there any further questions or comments from anyone here? Anyone like to say anything here? Yes, Lynn, at the back there.
Isn't it?
Yes, yeah. We can I print it out for you, and you can hang it on your wall. Is that a good idea?
That'd be very nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what is situational awareness?
So
appropriate, is it?
It is the awareness of what is exactly appropriate for a particular situation.
Right.
So you know that if I'm talking, this is the right way to talk. If I'm silent, the right way of being silent. If I go to the village, I go to the village in a certain way.
Right.
So the idea is to live in a way at all times that encourages the development of the spiritual path in all situations. So you have that thing there, yeah.
And then it ends with contentment. That's wonderful, isn't it?
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, contentment is one of the really nice words, actually, nice ideas.
Thank you.
Santutto is the Pali word down there for contentment. We have a monk called Santuti. So, is he living up to his contentment, to his name? I shouldn't ask that. Yes, Honorable Eddie, please, fire away.
Ajahn Brahmali, actually, going through this, the Buddha's rules, okay?
Yeah.
They seem, how to say, more, how to say, more, not harsh, comparing the times, during the Buddha's time.
Yeah.
Those spiritual seekers, those sadhus, they sleep on beds with nails, and they go without food, they have long hair, all these things. So, just my thinking, compare that, the extreme to the Buddha's rule, that seems logical, isn't it?
Yeah, middle way,
Yeah, like
middle
a
way,
bit of, like a conduct, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the practice, yeah.
Good, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, anyone else have any comment? Everyone is okay? Yeah. Okay. Good. Let's take the questions from overseas now. The last two questions over here, and this is from Hong Chao. I hope you're still there, Hong Chao. So, is it feasible to use ChatGPT as an aid in reading the Sutta and Atthakatha? I don't know. I think it perhaps is feasible. I don't know if the corpus of Pali is large enough because the corpus or the amount of books that they need to get accurate translation is often enormous, and the Pali is quite limited in scope. So I'm not sure if the corpus is big enough. And one of the important points about the Pali is also that the kind of Pali you find varies quite a lot, depending on which things you are reading. So if you read the suttas, it's one kind of Pali, go to the commentaries, a different kind of Pali. So it may not be directly comparable. That makes the corpus even smaller. Yeah. So I would say that in general, probably better to go with translators, and I think translators probably will do a better job than ChatGPT, at least for now. I don't know about the future. I think it is, there's kind of that scholarship that goes into translating is actually often very vast and very profound and deep. And I don't know if this software is able, at least not yet, to reach those standards. So I would recommend read Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Maybe you can supplement those translations with ChatGPT. Yeah, maybe you can use both, and maybe ChatGPT can come up with some alternatives that might be interesting. Maybe you can find some faults in existing translations using that. But I wouldn't go with those translations on their own. I think that might be going too far. Then we have from Wolfram Gabi in Germany. Hello, Wolfram. Can you possibly give us the practice and the meditation of Buddhism in a nutshell? A few words that trigger all when you are on your own. Just a few terms and concepts to help. Sure. So the practice is to be kind. Be kind, be kind, be kind in everything you do. And that kindness includes not doing any bad things. It includes doing good things. It includes having kind thoughts, in your mind as well. Buddhism is one of those few places where kindness is body, speech, and mind. So be kind as much as you can all the way through. Don't be hard on yourself if you fail in being kind. You are going to fail, and it's okay. Have compassion for yourself. You are trapped in a certain mind. You're trapped in a certain outlook and habits coming from the past, and it is almost impossible that you're going to be absolutely successful in being kind. So please be kind in a wise way. Don't be hard on yourself, because failure is inevitable on this path. When you have that mixture of kindness for everything and also compassion, understanding the limits of what we can do, you have a very good balance. And once kindness is firmly established, including generosity, then the next step is mindfulness of breathing. So mindfulness of breathing and kindness, this is really the establishment of the path. And then, to support all of that, you need right view. Right view is what you get from understanding the suttas, what you get from hearing good Dhamma teachings that are in line with the suttas, is what you get from observing the world in the right and wise way. right view arise in this way. Right view is the foundation for the entire path. Even breath meditation, even sila arise from right view. So be kind. Keep on developing a right view. Develop your perceptions in the right way. And then meditate if you can. If you can't meditate, it doesn't matter. It will come eventually. All right. So that's all for today. Yeah? Okay. Excellent. So nice to see you all again. Let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha for finish off.